Hello everyone, and welcome to UmattR TV. I'm Charles Briones, I go to FHS, and today I'm joined by other UmattR members.
I'm Kyle Rhodes, I go to PV.
I'm Palmer Bentley, and I go to FHS.
And today we have a real treat for you guys. We have truly a great American. He wears many hats, entrepreneur, engineer, served on the school board for 12 years, and one of Farmington's most elite tennis players. Please welcome Kyle Rhodes.
Thank you, Charles.
Of course,
Tyler
of course.
and Palmer.
Yes.
Appreciate that.
It's great to see you today.
Thank you.
Yes. And just as a disclaimer, so nobody thinks we're going easy on Kyle, I did want to let you know that we are friends, me and Kyle. Some would say best friends. And so with that said, let's get into this interview.
Right.
For those that don't know, you own Pesco, and if you could just describe what Pesco does.
You bet. Yeah. So Pesco, we're a manufacturing company. We've been around for 53 years, and we basically manufacture equipment for the energy industry, mostly oil and gas stuff. So whenever you see equipment out on a well site, that's what we build. We also have gotten into building equipment for the hydrogen market. And so we take natural gas and turn it into hydrogen. And then we're also building some water purification skids that'll go on test on the Navajo Nation probably within the next few months. So we got a lot of things going on at Pesco. We currently have about just less than 500 employees. So yeah, so we're an exciting company.
Very good, very good.
As someone who works in energy, what do you see as the future of energy?
Oh gosh, that's a really good question, and I don't know that anybody knows that, right? What's interesting about energy is that you have this whole thing going on with the climate change and how oil, how natural gas, how fossil fuels is supposedly affecting the climate change. Well, as you guys know, climate changes all the time. I was looking at some stuff several years ago about how energy affects economies. And I looked at an article about California, and they call it their energy policy is driving them into brown poverty. Because most of the population, a lot of the population in California is Hispanic or black. And so I looked at some statistics this morning that their energy policies, which say we'd rather not have electricity generated by fossil fuels, and we want it by wind or solar, it's driving up their costs so high that they're driving people into poverty. So really, I don't know what the future of energy is. I think that natural gas and oil are going to be around for a long time, but I think that hydrogen is going to be a big mix. I think that nuclear is going to become more prevalent because it's cheap. But wind and solar are going to have a piece of it too, even though it's a very, very small piece. So I think it's going to be a balanced approach, how we address energy issues. But know that one of the reasons why San Juan County does well is we have our own energy sources. Mm-hmm. And we have our own electric generation, so we can keep energy costs kind of down. Any place where you have high energy costs, California, other places, they have issues with economic development. They have issues with poverty. And so it's kind of going to be a balanced approach, in my opinion. From, I think, wise leaders, I think it's going to be a balanced approach.
Interesting, yes.
Awesome. So Charles mentioned that you're an entrepreneur, and I'm not an expert on entrepreneurs, but I have seen quite a few episodes of Shark Tank.
Okay.
And one thing that I do know is that being an entrepreneur comes with a lot of challenges. So what's the biggest challenge you faced as an entrepreneur, and how did you overcome it?
You know, I don't know that I would necessarily be called an entrepreneur as much as a businessman. I think I have a mindset of an entrepreneur because I don't mind taking measured risk, but I think that probably the biggest challenge we faced at Pesco is the downturns in the energy industry, in the oil and gas industry. Mm-hmm. Because basically we have to, when you see the commodity prices drop, then you see drilling activities slow down, you see the need for our equipment go down, And so we basically have to kind of dismantle our business, and then as commodity prices come back, then there's a ramp up, and so we go through this dismantling, and then we go through this ramp up of rebuilding the business. And really, we've done that 3 times in the last decade, really since 2009, we've done that 3 times, which is a lot. And so I think that the challenges are that you're it. In other words, the buck stops here. And so you're responsible for a lot of people, a lot of people's livelihoods, a lot of families and stuff. So there's a lot of responsibility, but it's fun though. I mean, it's very fulfilling, and but it is a challenge too. The old adage about having your own business, that you're going to be rich and you're not going to have to work very much, that is not accurate. I can tell you that right now. So.
Very nice. And there's been a lot of talk about the troubles in finding employees recently, especially with COVID. And our question to you is, what is the best way to attract and retain those good employees, especially in the current environment?
So we've gone through, before COVID hit, we're about 460, 470 people, and we dropped down to 220 people. And then we started building back up, and now we're about at 487 or something right now. And so one of the metrics that we look at on a month-to-month basis is how many people are we turning over? How many people are we retaining? And that percentage continues to drop, where we're keeping more and more people. And really, I mean, there's a number of things, but it's primarily around the culture and climate of your business. In other words, do people like to be there? Are they fulfilled being there? Do they have relationships being there? Are you teaching them the skills to be successful, that they can support their family? So it's that whole piece of how do you make people want to be there, and then talk to their families, their neighbors, their people they go to church with, about what a great place it is. So that's kind of how you retain people. And that's not unique to Pesco. That's every organization out there, it's built the same way. You know, you've got to have a great climate, culture and climate, to be successful. So that's how we've done it. We're not there yet.
Yeah.
I mean, we continue to have challenges, but we're getting closer. And, you know, you look at, I read several articles this week from the CEO of Chevron, the CEO of Oxy. They're having issues being able to produce enough energy because of their people issues. And so this is not with Pesco, it's not with San Juan County, it's all across the United States that they're having people issues. So the better you can equip people, both socially and skills-wise, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah, makes sense. As a business owner, what would you say San Juan County's biggest strength or weakness is?
I think the biggest strength is, it's interesting. I've looked at this because I've wondered the same thing. Why is it such a great place to be? And part of it is kind of the natural things we have going on. If you like to do things outdoors, this is a fantastic place to be. With the mountains, the desert, the lakes, the quality fishing out at the San Juan River. But then you look at the leadership positions in this area. So you look at the county manager, you look at the mayor, you look at the president of San Juan College, you look at the superintendent of schools, you look at the police chief, you look at all those key positions within the community. They're all people of value. They're values-based people. You don't see that. You don't see that in very many communities. And so I think that's our biggest asset here, is that the people that are leading this community are people of value. And we can build off of that. We can really face challenges when you've got values-based people leading. So I think that's our biggest asset.
What would you say about the weakness, if we have one? Or do you think?
I think that we have been really, really, really dependent on fossil fuels. And so with oil and gas, and then with the power plants closing down, the whole thing with coal and all that business, we've been really dependent on that. And it's taken us a while to get through some of that stuff. But here's a reality. I mean, it's been a challenge, but some of the natural gas wells that are being drilled now in the Memphis Shale, they're world class. I mean, they're world class. They'll compete against anybody in the world. And so when it comes back, this place is going to be really a good place to be
Yeah.
because it's world class stuff. So,
Yeah.
so I'll take the little bit of weakness with all the assets we have
Yeah.
here. Yeah.
Awesome. So our next question has to do, Charles mentioned that you served on the school board for about 12 years. And so one thing that I've noticed in school, and I think a lot of my classmates too, is that since COVID, school expectations seem to have dropped significantly. So like, I know we have like a 50 rule where if you don't turn in an assignment, the lowest grade you can get is a 50. Due dates aren't enforced as much. And there's been a changing from quarter grades to like semester grades, so that we don't have a grade for quarter 1 and quarter 2. Do you see these changes as being permanent, or do you anticipate us going back to pre-COVID standards?
Well, that is a really good question because I don't know. The thing that I have found out being involved with education for 12 years is that, so here in Farmington we have 11,000 kids. We have 1,600 employees. And that's a big ship to turn around. And so for example, at Pesco, we can put in a new process in the shop, and within a week or 2 weeks, we can see the impact of that change. We can measure the change, and then if it worked, then we can put that in the system. With education, it's years before you really know what you did has impact, right? That was really frustrating to me that we could not get data and make good decisions based on analyzing that data and have greater student achievement. But last night at my last board meeting, we were looking at data. So one of the things that we've done over the last 12 years that I've been on the board was we really had a plan on how to develop this district. And so the first thing was that culture and climate thing. We really wanted a district that people wanted to be in. And what you see, what I've seen throughout this whole time I've been on the board is that we get really good people from other districts that want to be here. And then we wanted to have really good leaders, values-based and skills-based leaders in every single leadership position across the district. And so you can see in every principal, we've got good leaders. In every administrative position, we've got good leaders. And then we wanted to work on relationships and stuff with our stakeholders, which that's the legislators and things like that. But the other big thing is that we had to make decisions based on data. Because always in the past, it was, I feel like the kids are getting better. I feel like they understand. Well, feelings don't get you into college. They don't get you a job. And so we really wanted to get data so that we could see how kids are doing. So last night we were going over data. So you guys had, I don't know if you guys did, but I know that elementary schools and middle schools had a September assessment done. And that assessment is measures their understanding of material that the content doesn't change throughout the year. So they're taking the same test in September, and then they take it again in January, and they take the same test at the end of the year in April to see how they've grown. Because what we're measuring is growth. And what we're seeing is that on every grade level, now they're just doing reading and math, but on every grade level, they've shown significant improvement from the September to the January, and we expect to see the same trajectory in April. And so I don't know about I agree with not giving a 0 if somebody doesn't turn in an assignment. I agree with that, and I'll tell you why in just a second. But as far as assessments, we really try to do these short cycle assessments to check understanding. And then we get together as teachers and administrators to talk about, okay, what's our understanding level? What do we need to change to get better understanding? Because what we're measuring in several different ways is critical thinking. That's what we want to do. We don't want to do rote memory. We want to do critical thinking skills. And it was interesting that they measure understanding by not just these assessments, but by even talking to parents, because they'll talk to parents and say, you know, my child didn't really understand this concept, or they're really getting this now and I'm shocked. You know, so it's listening to parents, it's listening to conversations between students and their teachers, it's listening to conversation between students and students. So it's this whole series of kind of both formal and informal assessments that we're trying to do to measure how kids are progressing toward proficiency, how they're growing, and how they're doing especially critical thinking stuff. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
How accurate are those tests and stuff?
I think they're extremely accurate, but what is a challenge is that we have got to make sure that our curriculum is what we're teaching, and what we're teaching is lined up with the assessments, and our assessments are lined up with the state assessments. Because if there's a disconnect in there, then we're not doing the right thing. So we got to make sure everything is lined up and everything is aligned, so we're measuring the right stuff. Because you guys could be doing really well on our internal assessments, but if they're not aligned with the state will think Charles is failing in,
Come on.
you know, oh, I'm sorry. So, but you see what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
trying to align everything so that we are teaching the right thing and measuring the right thing.
Yeah, in regards to that, I have one more question. Do you guys have any data comparing like pre-COVID to after COVID?
I'm sure we do, but I'm not familiar with it.
Okay.
I can't state what that is off the top of my head.
Okay.
I know that Farmington continued to grow at not the same rate, but we continued to grow in student achievement during COVID. Not at the same trajectory that we were, but we'd still continue to grow. Whereas most people in the state did not do that. And so we did pretty well under the circumstances.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
And you talk a lot about values-based people, and so I'm kind of curious what your values are, or what happens when you don't have those values-based people in charge, because you said Farmington has a lot of those, which makes it a great community.
Well, in some cases you don't have a choice, depending on what organization you're dealing with. You know, because at PESCO, I can make sure that we have the right people in place. And there's been cases where we haven't, that we've had to make what we say was we lovingly set them free. So, but what you try to do is first, I'll tell you the truth. In church the other day, they talked about, I go to Hills Church, and they were talking about the invisible contract, okay? And that is what they were kind of talking about then, was their relationship between between spouses, relationship between parents and kids, that you have your expectations, but it's not really written down or verbalized where you understand what that is.
Yeah.
Well, at PESCO, we need to make sure we don't have invisible contracts. In other words, my expectations are not they don't understand what it is. And my expectations are, you will make values-based judgments. But if I don't clarify that and hold them accountable for that, then we've got to understand what's happening, and then we support them and equip them to achieve where we need them to be. And I'll tell you the truth, I love people. And so I'm going to give them every chance I can give them to be successful. They're worth that. And most people I've found want to achieve success. And you just need to support them and help them do that. Now, I may be real naive, but I want to give everybody a chance. So.
That's beautiful. And so you've been on the school board for 12 years. So I'm sure you've seen a generational shift among the kids, or maybe you haven't, but that's what I would think. And I'm curious, with the youth of today, what do you think is the biggest obstacle between them and success?
I think it's not necessarily with the youth. I think it's really mindset. In other words, I think we went through a period of time there, and I don't know how it is now, really, but where kids were getting participation awards,
Yeah.
which I totally didn't agree with. That everybody needs to earn, and that's how you get a sense of value of yourself, is when you earn something. And just to get an award because you participated isn't valid. And so you don't see the deep roots developed with family, with organization, with churches, things like that, because they don't have to put out, And so I think that's part of the deal is that really let your expectations be known, but hold people accountable for those expectations, So I think that's part of the deal. But I don't know. We've got a lot of young engineers at PESCO, and they're phenomenal. But we've handpicked them, but they're phenomenal. And so they don't have that mindset. But we didn't, we didn't pick them to have that mindset.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that answered your question or
It
not.
did. What kind of engineers do you hire at PESCO?
We have electrical, mechanical, civil, industrial, chemical.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. So real quick, I have one more question regarding what you were talking about in regards to getting participation awards. So I have a question with so the lowest score we can get now on tests and those kind of things is a 50. And it seems to me that is kind of like the participation thing. I'm just curious what's the school's what's their reasoning for doing that?
Well, I think their reasoning, and the argument can be put both ways, and they're valid arguments. But the reasoning is that, let's just say that this kid got 100 on this test and then didn't show up for this test. Well, that's average. If you have a 0, average of that is a 50. Whereas it's obvious that he understood the content on this test, didn't show up for this test, but should he be penalized that much? So I think their thinking is that, well, they've got to be penalized something, but really to go down to a 50%, is that really valid? So I think that's primarily the thinking behind a 50%.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Never thought about that in
Yeah,
that way.
yeah, because to give them a 75% is, well, they ace this test, so they obviously they know something.
So our next question is, once graduated, what is the best way that someone could go back and support the school district and give back to their community in that way?
I think that I have a real, I think just getting involved in different things and advocating for the community. Somebody like Charles, for example, and I've encouraged my kids to do this because they both played tennis, soccer, basketball, and everything. Go out and coach kids. I coached kids, all my own kids, for 26 years before I got on the school board. Coach kids, they're our future. Things like that. You'd be a great coach for little kids.
I do. I coach kids a little bit.
Yeah, and so things like that you don't have to have your name up here in lights. You can impact kids. I know last night I was talking to one of our administrators, and because last night was my last night on the board, and she said, you told me something when you first came on the board that impacted me. And she said, you saw me and you said, Nicole, when are you going to get into leadership? Because she's a teacher at Mesa View. When are you going to get into leadership? And she said, that got me started. So you guys can have that same impact on these kids. What you're doing with UmattR matters. It really does. And so that's advocating for the community. So that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kyle, you went to college at one of probably the top 10 colleges in New Mexico.
I didn't see that coming.
New Mexico State. Yeah, definitely top 10. And I know back when you went to college and 55?
Yeah, it was actually late 40s.
Late 40s. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, when you went, a student loan was the same price as getting a Big Mac at McDonald's these days, and these days that's changed a lot. And so, what would your response to be if somebody came up, say my age, and said, "Hey, Kyle, is this something I should pursue? Because I'm basically selling my soul here."
Right. So I think there's a lot of avenues to go to college if that's your course, if that's what you want to do. I think that now you don't have to go to college necessarily to be successful. I think there's a lot of different ways to be successful. We've got welders out there, we have pipe fitters, we have electricians that make more money than a lot of college graduates, okay? And so there's another course, but I'm on the foundation of Mexico State. And so they have around $300 million in the foundation. And most of that is earmarked for scholarships. And so there's a lot of scholarships available that never get taken because kids don't know to apply for them, basically. So I think there's a lot of avenues that you can take to help with funding of college. And so I think it's really an opportunity that you shouldn't really let money get in the way because there's a lot of resources out there to help. I mean, there really is. We have tons of money down at State that, I mean, they don't have them really at UNM because they're doing crime prevention with that money.
Okay.
But at State, we give it to the kids.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Touche.
What is the significance of being involved in the community?
Oh, I mean, that's the only way to get the community better, is to get involved and know what's going on and try to impact it positively. If you don't have people involved, it's just dead.
Yeah.
So you got to do something. I mean, unless you want to live in a dead zone, So yeah, you got to.
Kind of like Cruces. Yeah.
No, Cruces is alive and kicking.
All right. It is all right on the border. I'll give you that.
No, truthfully, Las Cruces is a great place to be. And it's really interesting at Mexico State because it's set off a little bit from the city proper. It's not in the middle of the city like UNM is. And so it's their own kind of community. And when my daughter went down there, she graduated from PV in 2010 and then graduated from there in 2014, then went to Texas Tech for a master's. She had a fabulous experience down there. She went to every basketball game, she went to every football game. She's involved in stuff. And it just was it was kind of like a family atmosphere that it was really good. Yeah, it was really good. So don't discount it.
All right. Well, unless there's any questions you have for us.
So what are the plans? Palmer, what are you going to do after you graduate?
Yeah, so I plan to go on a mission for my church. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Okay.
And so I plan to serve a mission for my church. I just turned in my papers, and I should find out where I'm going next week.
Oh, cool.
And then I plan to go to BYU.
Oh, okay, cool. 2 years, 2-year mission?
Yeah.
Okay, good. And you, Connor?
So I plan to go to the University of Arizona in Tucson.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And study business and then hopefully get into law school. So.
Well, good for you.
Yeah.
Engineer.
Engineering at the University of New Mexico, the premier university, the flagship university for New Mexico. And then after that, we'll see. Maybe I'll come work down at Pesco.
There you go.
I don't know.
We can use good engineers.
Well, I don't know if I'm a good engineer, but we'll see.
I'm excited for you to go into engineering. I really am.
Thank you. What kind should I go to? What would
mechanical.
you say? Mechanical?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, because engineering gives you a basis of
Yeah.
critical thinking for every other discipline. For attorneys, Alan McCulloch, who's a doctor here, he's a petroleum engineer. He's a urologist now, but he was a petroleum engineer. So it's a good basis. But it's hard work. It's really hard work.
And what kind of engineer are you?
I'm still a mechanical engineer.
Mechanical? Awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Well, thanks, guys. This was fun.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you.
you. All right. Thanks for joining in. And join us on the next UmattR TV. Very cool.